we have a big problem with buy-in and coaching our teachers because teachers know everything, right?
Oh,
Did you know?
When my kids were in elementary school, they told me that was true.
Yeah. So, and you can't teach old dogs new tricks. We have a lot of old dogs.
Okay.
Okay.
I did not say that. I want to go.
That was
We
me.
are on
Quote
video,
me.
though,
Go
just
ahead.
so we're clear about that.
So basically, we want to play into their competitiveness. They are a competitive, fun group when they want to be. And so what I think we want to do is create a game, either Jeopardy or play clips, and then they can guess or choose a specific praise. What would you do in this situation? Oh, this is the right answer. And so I think we're just trying to adapt to their personalities and make a game out of it and just trick them into learning information.
Okay.
And when all else fails, which it won't, but in case, we are going to pull the college and career readiness standards and show them where, in fact, this will fit into their curriculum no matter where you're at. Because we know middle school, high school teachers, that's where their brain is, which is absolutely awesome. So we need to make it appropriate for them. And that's how we can do it, is attach them to the standards.
Perfect.
So our group talked about revisiting the multiple purposes for the tickets, revisiting that with staff, that we're changing adult behavior when we're using those tickets, and then also it's focusing on specific and positive feedback, but how the skills that we're addressing can be changing over time. And then our group also liked the list of students and kind of identifying connections that are being made and increasing those connections, and that's another purpose of the tickets, is to increase student connections. And then that 2x10 intervention.
Yep. Great. Thank you. Do you mind passing it along?
Yeah. We talked about all kinds of stuff. But yeah, adding in those staff expectations and then trying to be better about communicating to our families about our tier 2 processes and that it's a positive thing, because sometimes they get caught off guard, like, what do you mean my kid there's something wrong? So, and like one of the last things we decided is that should be communication coming from the actual classroom teacher. It shouldn't be our counselor or the check-in teacher. It should be the classroom teacher that's working with the families and stepping it up one notch. So.
Good.
It was great to recognize some of the things that we already do and capitalizing on those. The applying the logic to families with the triangle, we circled and are going to, we do family nights, but maybe not with as much intention as we want to have. So increasing the intention of the family nights to include some of the underlying PBIS protocol that we want to kind of get into the families. And we also talked a lot about the 4-to-1 or 5-to-1 complement or reinforcing positive behavior to a negative, and how we probably don't model that very well, and how we can kind of in a game way or teaching moment in our beginning of the school, back to school teacher meetings, how we can maybe allow them to recognize how important that is, even for us, that we remember the one negative and rarely the positive, but to increase those positives. That's what we talked about.
Right. So this is a common theme, that as adults, we like reinforcement too. We want to know if we're doing a good job. And we also have to practice. We have to practice giving praise and corrective feedback. So 5 minutes in a faculty meeting, you can practice giving and receiving feedback, both, because some people have a hard time accepting compliments, or some of us get defensive if we get feedback or are corrected, right? So we have to practice so that we can model for our students. And yes, we like to be acknowledged with prizes and toys and things like candy and whatever too, right?
Right.
Okay, over here. All right. Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay. So we talked about with our school that both of our schools that we would like to do family nights where we talk about the families developing the home matrix and then giving them family trainings, because I did a survey and that was a lot of feedback I got from my family was that they wanted more information, wanted to know how they could implement it at home. So we're looking forward to scheduling those nights. And then for teacher buy-in, we talked about doing a teacher store like we have for the student store, so the teachers would earn the same incentives that students use, and they can cash them in at the teacher store, just like the students can. So we're modeling that for the kiddos, and then we're modeling that in our staff meetings too.
Love that. P.S. I really heard her say, we did a survey for our parents, so if anyone wants to see what that looks like, that's great. We have to ask our families. How can we, hopefully, are you asking your families, how do we best communicate with you? I get this even at the doctor's office. Do you want us to call, text, email? How are you asking families what works best to talk with you? Oh, I'm not probably supposed to use both of these. I think that's a rule. Sorry. And so some schools, my school uses the Remind app. There's lots of ways with technology now that we can communicate and have two-way communication with our families. And we've got to ask them. We've got to ask them, what'll get you to the school, or when is a good time, and things like that. Others?
Can I respond or
Yeah.
comment based on some things I'm hearing?
Yeah.
Fall down.
Yeah.
I as I'm listening, I'm hearing a lot about teacher buy-in or investment, getting teachers to invest. Speaking from a teacher perspective, an administrator perspective, and then being able to work with a variety of schools, we have to continue to go back to meeting the needs of the adults in the building. The whole idea of social emotional learning, if we don't start with our adults, if we don't provide support, if we don't increase awareness about what the needs are, it's going to be very difficult to get the buy-in, that appreciation, that value, because we've got teachers in the building that are absolutely phenomenal. We also have teachers in the building that kids will say, they just don't care about me. Well, it may not be that they don't care about them. It may be that they are not happy with what they're doing right now for whatever reason, and that's evident. So we need to be able to tap into that and say, okay, if you are in this profession and you're going to stay in this profession, how can we better support you?
Right. Thank you. Okay. I'm going to try to move us along, which means I'm going to skip over some slides. Please remember that you've got each element of this action planning companion guide printed out for you. Some of the things I'm going to skip through quickly right now, we've been talking about these last couple of days. So the good news is you're not missing out on anything, and we're going to have the state team here to support you as you move forward, right? All right, so the last part of the TFI in each of the tiers is around evaluation. And so data-based decision making, which we have talked about all throughout our time together, is these pieces that you know. We've got to really expand the data that we're looking at. And as you already have identified, in part that means you've got to start thinking about what data should we even be asking for? And how do we go about getting it? Who are the people that we need to ask? Who has this information? And that can take some time, and it's going to evolve over time, right? You'll start to uncover new data. But we've provided you with lots of different slides and activities to get you thinking about the types of data to look for, okay? And so then your team is going to need to start reviewing this data together to start to make some decisions about what do we need to install at Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, et cetera, okay? And so it's really going to be important that you think about what interventions do we already have in place. Remember we said yesterday, are there any we should stop doing because we're not doing it with fidelity, or we're not seeing outcomes as a result, or whatever. And are we missing anything? Because once you start to review more data, you're going to uncover more kids who need support, right? And so that can feel overwhelming. So we've got to think strategically about how we're going to meet the needs of our kids. Here, this example comes from East Marion Elementary. So they're one of our random control trial schools. And this, we touched on yesterday, this is their screening data. And then they use the early warning system. And so someone in their district actually created a new spreadsheet with formulas to give them kind of this data re-aggregated to let them know who were the kids that they really should be paying close attention to, who were the most at risk with that cross-cut of data, okay? We also should be asking our kids, do you have a survey in Nevada already that all kids complete? Yes, okay. And do you feel like you're using that data? Sorry, go ahead. 5th grade and up, so each year? Okay, that's good. And is that data that your schools have access to, and furthermore, are you then using it? Here's what I know. Where I live in Pennsylvania, they have this survey. First of all, it's optional if schools want to use it or not to have their kids complete it. But then they don't. Then it's like they have this. I mean, it's a tremendous data set, but folks aren't really using it in the most effective way, or in a way that's going to help them with teasing out and now what, right?
So this is also something I do for the state. So everybody in the state of Nevada takes, except for Clark and Washoe, takes the Nevada School Climate Social Emotional Learning Survey. And those surveys, the reports are provided every year. We haven't gotten them out yet. They were supposed to be out, a few weeks ago. But we had to make them ADA compliant so that we can link it to the department's website. We also added some functionality in terms of trend data and peer matching. The Nevada School Climate Survey informed the development of the U.S. Department of Education's School Climate Survey. So we can use their benchmarks. So all of your scores for this year have been recalculated to align with the national benchmark. So when you get your school climate reports, the survey reports, you'll see that it aligns with the benchmarks. You'll also have a trend report that shows you for the 4 years of implementation that we've had, how your school has done on each of the constructs, and that's broken out by subgroups with N sizes. We also have a really cool peer matching tool where you can, it's like magic for someone who's not a techie. You click on the variables and it'll match you to schools and tell you how you align with those folks, and it'll visualize the data for you in an exportable graphic that you could put into a PowerPoint for staff trainings and stuff. And one thing that the department started last year, we called it Data Ready Nevada, and we did a data roadshow, and it was a collaboration between the Office for Safe and Respectful Learning Environments, which is our office, the Office of Student and School Supports, and the Assessment Data Accountability Measurement team. And we linked it to the launch of the newest Nevada School Performance Framework, which is the 5-star rating. And this fall, when we come out in October, Carson, Elko, and Vegas, we're looking just at chronic absenteeism, but we pull all these different data sources, including the school climate data, and we work with school teams and say, this is how you use your data in your school improvement planning processes. But that training in terms of the school climate survey specifically is available to all of you for free through me and Mickey. You just have to ask for it. So we can come out and support your teams on a local level if that's helpful.
And just another plug, one thing that was phenomenal, I thought, with Lyon County, their high schools all came together and we did what we called a leadership summit with some of their high school leaders. And leaders, student leaders, student leaders, meaning not leaders like I'm the top, I'm the class president and I have the best GPA. And they really tried to do kind of across the student body, get a good representation. And they brought 5 to 6 kids per school. And then we did an incredible retreat day that we decided needed to be 2 days, where the kids actually analyzed the data. And then the kids created some action plans with their principal, with a counselor potentially, or a teacher. It's an amazing use of that information, and we would be more than happy to come to any of your schools and help you put a day like that together and be part of that day.
Thank you. I feel like I need to say no more about this. All right. We're going to get into tier 2. We will take a break. How about in just a little bit? Can you guys hang in there for a little bit longer? Okay. Yes? Okay, good. Thank you. All right. So again, we're going to start to talk about now this continuum at tier 2. Remember, we said all of this seems the hardest at tier 2. So remember, we want to start with that basis of check in, check out. A lot of schools go to that as their first tier 2 intervention because it doesn't take a ton of adult time or resources, and it's highly effective based on what we know from the literature and can catch a bunch of kids, right? We said 7 to 12%, and we want to catch them early, not waiting until they've got 1 foot in an alternative placement, and then we give it a try, and 3 days later someone says, that's not working, they're out of here, right? Okay. So by show of hands, most of you are familiar with check-in, check-out, right? We can skip past the what is check-in, check-out, okay? All right. So, sorry if I'm going to give you all. We're going to keep going here. All right. What I think would be helpful to do is have you all spend a little bit of time thinking about what do you already have in place at tier 2, and what would be some of the action steps you would need to take so that you can begin to formulate what else should we be thinking about adding as we start to look at this expanded data, right? So this is where we have the mapping of, in my building, what do I already have in place, okay? And that's going to vary, even if you're in the same district, because remember, context is important. So although your district may say, we're going to use Botvin Life Skills or Second Step or what have you, when we get into tier 2, in some of your schools, you may need to select some other evidence-based intervention in addition to maybe a small group instruction around those same skills taught in Botvin or Second Step, but for a few kids who need to have a higher frequency and dosage of the teaching of those skills, if that makes sense, okay? So I know we've got some schools who are all from the same district. You may have a different tier 2 map than your colleagues have. Does that make sense? Okay? So I think right now, and by the way, this activity is in the workbook, and so again, we'll make sure you know where to find that. But let's take, okay, let's take 15 minutes, so we'll go till 2 o'clock, and I want you to map out what interventions do you have in place at tier 2, and then try to respond to these questions. What do we expect to happen as a result of putting this intervention in place? Who facilitates it right now? What are our current decision rules for in, on, out? Is it, okay, this kid's driving me crazy, they go in that intervention or with that person, okay? How many students participated? Can you answer that question? Do you know how many received any one of your interventions? Do you know if they made progress, which you would have had to have predetermined your progress monitoring indicator ahead of time? And maybe some of you have done that with some of your interventions. Was it evidence-based? Okay, and then were you implementing it with fidelity?